Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Welcome. Welcome. It is Tuesday night. My name is Dominic. And if you are here, you should be on the True live stream where we're going to get started tonight with a nice, gentle yin pose. Central focus for tonight. It's going to be all about the hips. So, really going to spend a lot of time seated. So, for that reason, uh, now's a good time to grab a blanket. It helps with the seated poses. If there's one thing that um, we don't get enough of in the hot room, typically, is the use of these blankets, especially in yin. I have found during this time being able to work in a non-hot environment. This is kind of my favorite thing to have lying around is a blanket to elevate the hips. It just makes things a little bit softer from a forward bend standpoint. Sometimes those postures are not the most comfortable, so a little elevation of the hips. And again, it doesn't need to look like my blanket. It could be a comforter, a couple pillows, just something that's going to raise the seat up. Also, a block shaped someone like this foam block. They come in many flavors and varieties. If you don't have one, something in your house that looks like this is a perfect way to get you started. So 60 minutes is the duration of the class. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. Just with some opening thoughts, a little bit about the theme. I told you physically what I wanted to work into, so energetically, and kind of some of what you're going to hear me discuss is kind of what I want to roll into next. So in writing this class and thinking about what I wanted to share with you as an audience, I really spent some time thinking a bit about the idea of humility and confidence, and what is the balance of those two things look like. I think sometimes in our life we can either sway more towards one or another, whether that's we find ourselves being so humble that, to the point of being taken advantage of, or to the point of being overlooked because we don't come off as being super assertive. Or on the flip side of that, we roll super heavy with the confidence, even though we don't always have the skill, a little bit of fake it till you make it, which I'm totally fine with, as long as you have a bit of humility and you stay open and you stay learning. Because either way, you never want to be leaning too far into either sides of a spectrum. You want to find the right balance, which is what our physical yoga practice helps us to do. It's helping to rebalance the body so that we can sit comfortably for meditation and for calming. So definitely want to do that. I read an interesting story about the Buddhist monk who got to meet with this reporter for the first time. This reporter was all about Buddhism, and he meets this monk, and they spend hours together, and the reporter is incessantly talking nonstop. Like, he never, ever quits. Ever, ever, never. And, monks are pretty patient folks, but I imagine at some point they're just like, shut up. And so this monk decides to get a glass of tea, and he begins to fill up the cup for the reporter. And as he's filling up the cup for the reporter, he continues to fill that cup up. The cup starts to overflow into the saucer, from the saucer to the table, from the table onto the lap of the reporter. The reporter hops up, freaks out. Hey, what are you doing? You're still, you're filling up my cup. It's already full. And, the monk in his very wise way told the reporter, well, it's exactly like you. It's full. It has no room, right? And so when you're overconfident about something, sometimes you're full. Your cup is full. And you can't receive new information because you just assume you know it all. So, try to avoid that. Keep an empty cup. It certainly helps. It allows for you to have competence, which is the balance. It's confidence with humility leads to competence. So you know what you're capable of, but you also know how to balance it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to weave that in through the class, give you some physical poses to tie that back together and see how you can feel it in your body. Start by laying down for me on your belly so that we can start breathing. This is my cat, Harley. She will show up and make plenty of appearances throughout the night. Please, I hope you're not offended by that fact. I can't get rid of her. She does live here. She's been in this house longer than me. So there is that. From this position, you're going to allow the heels to drop in and the toes to turn out. You're going to come onto your belly. Your forearms are going to touch the mat. You're going to reach hands for each one of your elbows. Now, if you have a block, like I suggested having, now's the time to use it because you can rest your forehead on it. It makes for a nice, comfortable, place for you to rest the forehead by putting the block here. Hands grab the elbows, and you simply rest the head onto your block. Now, blocks can pretty much go low, medium, or high if you're using one. Now, as you do this, I want you to think about having a soft chest. Now, as I mentioned earlier when I was kind of giving the setup for the themes of class, the way we're physically going to find these themes in our poses is through a bit of lengthening of our tailbone, as well to really lock in the metaphor and to symbolize that bit of humility, that hip bit of groundedness we talked about. And then for our expansion or for our confidence, we're going to work on softening the chest and opening out expansively through the arms and, really radiating energy from our center. So as you sit in this pose here with head on a block or just softly with the eyes looking forward, I want you to think about allowing the heart to soften towards the ground. Feel your belly make contact as you breathe in. And feel how that forces and elevates the shoulders to lift. Now, if you start to draw your attention to your breath and start to focus on that 3-part breathing that we like to do, which means breathe in the belly, breathe into the belly so much that it expands into the ribs and then into the chest, you might start to feel the shoulders slightly lift from the natural breath. So it's inhale into the belly, expand into the ribs, and then pull all the way up into the chest. As you exhale, it's softly allowing those things to come back to the earth, come back to their groundedness. Now, the floor gives your belly something to press against, so it helps you to learn and feel that breath, that rising and falling sensation. Your yin poses are designed to help open up the connective tissue. So that's why you don't hear us speak a lot about muscle engagement. We want to allow the opportunity to softly open up through the joints and stretch those parts of the body. And if your muscles are strongly engaged, then it kind of takes away from some of that. Now, that's not to say you don't have muscle engagement. You still will have natural muscle engagement. But we're not calling our attention to it, right? Energy flows where attention goes. So our energy is geared towards being soft in the poses. And right now, I want you to continue to be geared towards your breath. Constantly watching that rising and falling sensation. Now, the second thing you might start to notice early on in your practice is that you might lose your place in focusing on your breath. Your mind might wander. It might go for a stroll or start thinking about what has happened today or what's on the news with all that's going on, which is fine if it does. When you notice that, before you start going in on yourself, pause. Notice that that's thinking. And then start focusing back on that breath again, starting from the inhale. Familiarize yourself with that concept because it will carry you throughout practice. Eventually becoming the way that you allow your cup to empty in real time. Slowly start to lift the head if it's on a block, or if it's not, simply lift the head. Move your block out of your way if you're working with that. Release the elbows. And place the hands out in front of you, coming into a Sphinx pose, which is our next pose. You will now elevate the heels and bring the toes together to touch. So you kind of making sure everything's nice and firm here. Your fingertips are stretching forward. Your shoulders are stacking over your wrists. Your eye gaze is softly looking forward. You can also pull your block back into play and allow your forehead to rest there. Otherwise, it's a simple gaze forward, and it's a soft heart forward. Shoulder blades come down. Don't have them hunched up here in your ears. I want you to make space, find length. This is about improving the curve of the lumbar spine. So maybe you feel a bit of tension there. But if you do, see if you can use your breath as a tool to soften. Now, we talked a little on the last pose about how we breathe into the belly, into the ribs, into the chest, 3-part breath, making it as dynamic as we can when we can. Sometimes the shape that we're in doesn't allow for us to do that. But the other piece of it is how we breathe, mouth open or mouth closed. And at all times, when possible, we want to shoot to keep the mouth closed. And the reason for that is because it helps to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest system, your calm the down system. When we're breathing out of our mouth, we are triggering that fight or flight response because our DNA says, oh, we need more oxygen because a tiger is chasing us. However, there's not a tiger chasing you unless you were part of the Tiger King documentary, in which a tiger should be chasing you because you made some choices that led to that. But for the rest of us, no tigers should be chasing you at any time. So you shouldn't be activating that system. Now, a lot of the normal stressors in our life press into the elbows a bit so that the shoulders lift up slightly more, because you're going to start to soften over time. There are natural things in our lives that are going to mimic those fearful responses. It's our job to then have to go in and tell the body, hey, none of that, calm down. And the way we do that starts with our breath. So the mouth is closed, in and out the nose, soft and steady, as equal as you can make the breaths. The more you start to equalize, the more you start to harmonize. The body likes that harmony, that balance, and it starts to say, oh, okay, it's cool for us to relax. We're good here. Slowly start to soften. Allow the heart to melt down. Allow the arms to come out to the sides like a T. Let your chin rest on your mat or your right or left ear, respectively, on the mat. Just appreciate the straight spine that you now have. Take 3 quality breaths using the tools we previously discussed. Breathing into the belly, into the ribs, into the chest. For maybe a count of 4. So that's something like inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the top of your breath. And then exhale 2, 3, 4. Pause at the bottom of your breath. In 2, 3, 4. Exhale 2, 3, 4. Hands are going to come in line with the chest, fingertips face forward. Push into the palms, come on up to a tabletop. We're going to continue with that connection. We're going to bring the hips in, get a little bit of length. with some cat-cows. We've done these traditionally, so let your shoulders stack over your wrist. Let your hips stack over your knees. You can tuck toes or leave them flat, whatever feels good for you. I'm going to leave mine flat because I like to add on, maybe throw a child's pose in here for fun. I'll show you what that looks like. But we'll start with spine long, head long. As you start to inhale, I want you to think about your pelvis tipping forward. So you're increasing the lumbar curve as the pelvis goes forward. So you're anteriorly tilting it. So inhale, pelvis drops, curve tilts, kind of butt sticks up, shoulder blades pull back, eye gaze looks forward. As you exhale, we're going to find lengthen the lumbar spine by drawing the tailbone down. So the opposite of what you did, you're going to push into your belly or push into your hands and puff out your back. There you go. Belly draws in. Eye gaze looks down. Inhale. Everything curves and pulls forward. Exhale, everything rounds. So we're going from extension to flexion of the spine. Only we're trying to lock it in with our breaths. Notice I'm holding my cat pose and then dropping my hips from that shape right into child's pose, which you can totally try if you want. Then I inhale and I pull it right back into cow pose. Really trying to open up that spine a little bit. Maybe you've been sitting all day. Maybe you've not had a lot of opportunity just to connect with your body and your breath. So try to be as fluid and as mindful as you move. That word mindful means to move with intention and purpose, right? Your whole day has probably been just automatic, happening, dealing with the fires in front of you. Now I want you to be all about you, all about just the one movement that you have to do now. Come back to neutral when you're done with this last set. And we're going to take some thread the needle for a bit of our shoulder stretch. So take an inhale, reach the right hand up. As you do, get long through your fingertips. As you exhale, draw your right hand underneath your left armpit and extend your left arm out long. Put your right ear on the mat. And then sit into the pose with the breath. As you inhale, imagine that you're taking energy from your belly button and you're expanding it all the way out until it shoots out through the fingertips, finding that length all the way out, really representing what it means to have confidence in a pose, to feel strong in a pose, to feel centered in a pose. Start to bring that left hand back in till it can be flat, kind of in front of your face. Press into the palm. Allow yourself to lift up. Reach the right hand back for the ceiling before settling back into a neutral position. As you do, we'll set up for the other side. So we'll get ready for the left side. Take an inhale, reach the left hand up. Exhale, thread your needle. Slide it under. Extend out your right hand from the cord to the fingertips. Maybe you rise up on the fingertips of that hand, really increasing the stretch by adding and applying just a small amount of pressure. Right hand comes in front of the face, press down into the palm. As you push into your right hand, your left hand floats up. And then you come on back to center. Back to that tabletop position. Go ahead and bring the knees together, bring the feet apart. We're going to move in the saddle pose or Virasana in non yin. So I like a block for this. If you don't need a block, I'm going to turn this way so you can see what we're doing. Your hips are going to sit between your heels. Since we are going to be here for a few minutes, I prefer to do this with the block. This hurts my knees. You don't want any knee pain. That's the main thing to avoid here. It's not having any knee pain. So for me, that means I need a block to kind of elevate my sits bones ever so. Maybe pillows or blankets work for you. Now, the other variation, which feels better for my knees, is for the toes to come together and then for me to kind of lean back. I prefer this. This gets really deep into my quads. So if you have tight quads tonight, and you really want to start to open those up, it's a wonderful, wonderful way to kind of get there. And maybe you feel that in the first version. That's the thing about the variations I give. I try to provide multiple choices here because you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to take a journey. Yoga is not about you showing up, doing one thing, walking off the mat, being boom. It's not how it works at all. It's a practice for a reason, which means you have to show up, which means you have to try different varieties, and it means it's probably going to change over time. So what you choose to do today won't be the thing that works for you tomorrow, and that will frustrate you to all hell. Because our brains are wired to appreciate and enjoy, some type of consistency. Yeah, consistency. I think that's the word I want. Normalcy. All of those things give us safety and security. But at the same time, we need to have spontaneity. So it's never just one or the other. It's always going to be, how do I recalibrate constantly throughout my life? And yoga is a constant recalibration. So now as we sit here stretching the front of the thighs and the legs and a little bit of the glutes, it's a good time maybe to work with some of what's going on here in our wrists. So I like to interlace my fingers, bring the hands out in front of me. Reach the palms forward. My left toe's cramping. That's funny. That never happens until it does. Awesome. So I'm going to switch to the half variation, which is exactly what you see me doing here. Anyways, hands reach out in front of you. Extend the arms out. Just opening through the shoulders. Bring the hands up and overhead. Find a bit of length. Now, as you reach the hands up, don't let your rib cage flare out. I want you to draw the ribs down while drawing the pubic bone up. So that's going to activate the core if you do those two things, those dual actions at the same time. You're going to turn on the core a little bit. Nothing crazy. Bring the hands down. Interlace the fingers. Maybe roll out the wrist a little bit. That was so odd that my foot decided it did not want to play along. Let's see if it feels better now. It's just having a day, I guess. Okay. Continuing that wrist rotation. You can switch it up, go to the other side. So again, we do to one, we do to another. Now bring the palms together. Thumbs are facing towards you. I want you to open your hands like a book. Now the edges of your pinkies are touching. Keep rotating the hands until the backs of the hands are touching and your fingertips face forward with your thumbs facing away. Now turn the hands down and away. Yeah, they move like a little pendulum. Things might feel a little tight there. That's okay. Roll with it. Work with it. Roll them back up. Edges touch. Palms touch. Thumbs should now be in front of you. So your thumbs are in front of you and then you move them away from you. That's all you're doing. Don't overthink it. Trying to get the backs of the hands to touch. That's how you're going to get the stretch. Pull or draw your heart softly forward. There you go. Shoulder blades down. That'll give you some space. Hands come back together to touch. And now I like to grab my wrist. So I take my index finger and my thumb, wrap it around the wrist, close the wrist, and then just make circles. Now it's a little harder because I have a watch and my fitness tracker on, but it just feels good to the wrist. And just so we wrap up the upper body a bit, just take some neck circles. Small neck circles. Maybe 2 or 3 of those to the left shoulder. Pause, flip it and reverse it, go towards the right. Slow down if you need to. Find your sticky points. Hang out with them. All right, shake it off. We're done. Lift the hips. Tap out the toes. Come on down to your sit bones. Put the feet out. Put your feet out in front of you. Just like that. Butterfly pose. So I told you we were going to do some seated hip stuff. So if you were working with a blanket, now's a good time to put it under you. Elevate those hips. I don't necessarily need it, but I certainly do like it. So that's where I'm going to start, is elevated on a blanket. All right. We got a couple minutes here in butterfly. So the soles of the feet come together, the knees fall out to the side. I'm going to turn to face you so you can see what your options are. You can be facing the long edge of your mat or, the front of your mat, the short edge, whichever works for you. From here, draw the heels in super close, sit up really tall, look forward really softly, and that's always nice. Now, in this position, I want you to try to keep your pelvis as neutral as possible if you're sitting up nice and tall, if you're taking this variation. Now, if you're going to fold forward at all, I want you to draw your tailbone down. So you're going to create a little bit of rounding as you do. And that's going to force your shoulders to round. That's going to force your upper body to round. And then I want you to come down this way with the chin tucked. And we'll spend some time here and then we'll show you and we'll move into the other variant of this pose, which is the keeping the spine nice and long. Long spine or rounded spine. So we're in the rounded spine position. So we look from the side like this. Tailbone drawing down, chin tucking in, softly sitting with the feet together. Soft drishti and eye gaze. If you find yourself clenching your jaw, relax your teeth in your mouth. Matter of fact, just check in with those areas. What's the quality of what's going on there? Because you might be holding some tension there. Slowly start to come up. Straighten and lengthen out the spine. You're going to keep the feet where they are. You're going to keep the spine long this time. So the way you do that is the opposite of what you did before. So now you're going to allow your pelvis to kind of come forward or kind of tip forward. So anteriorly forward. So you're drawing your pubic bone down. And then you're going to start to work your chest forward. Notice that I'm not rounding. Notice that my spine is staying as straight as it can. Also notice that I'm not as deep as I was. You might not be, and that's okay. This is why we don't just get caught up on depth, right? We're trying to be precise here and learn how to teach our bodies to work a little bit differently for us, but it's not always easy to do because we want to go to the pretty deep shapes. Like no one sits up in a forward fold, but I'll tell you there's a lot of benefit to doing that, both for your spine and your hamstrings. So you need to know your variables. Then you need to make the choices that work for you that day. Of course, lastly, after saying all of that and maybe making you feel bad for choices that you made, don't feel bad, number one. Number two, always listen to what your body liked or wanted or was drawn to. So if you tried one and then you tried two and you like one better, go back there. You're the one that has to sit in it for the next 10 seconds or so. Slowly start to come up. Bring the hands behind you, send the legs out in front of you. Maybe windshield wiper the legs a little bit. Oh, I just like the way that feels on my hips since I'm not doing that anymore. It just feels really nice. All right, we're going to move in to caterpillar. So we're doing this backwards. We're reversing the chrysalis process. From butterfly to caterpillar is where we go. I'm going to make changes to my blanket. I'm a little high for my taste. So that's the thing, right? Figure out what's going to work for you. Play around. This is half of the fun, is the exploration part. You know, it's like if you're cooking and you're working with a new recipe, you're trying to figure out the right dosages and different things. So don't be so serious in your yoga practice. All right, same rules apply for two types of forward folds. We're gonna work through kind of both of them. So again, this time we'll start with the long spine variation. So bend your knees. Yep, sit up nice and tall. Reach your chest forward. Notice that my chest reaches my thighs before I get any further. And then I'm just going to let my hands hang out here. I'm not really going to worry about rounding. I'm just going to stay right here. Don't worry about keeping this part of my back kind of long. Well, not necessarily long, a little more curved, I guess. Trying to draw the tailbone forward. Oh, I said that backwards. Draw the pelvis forward. That's what I meant. Yeah, those are the words. Sometimes they don't come out. You might find sitting up taller feels a little more uncomfortable because maybe your body's not used to that shape. But remember, you were grounded in either one of these, right? This is the humility part of the class, right? We find humbleness in maybe what these poses asked of us. And then, to be very frank, I honestly think that these seated poses and these yin poses are sometimes often like the most challenging poses. Because, well, I mean, they don't really excite us the way a handstand does. But God, they're worth it. You need it. Like, you got to have them both. You can't get it both ways. Come on now. All right. Slowly start to sit up. Now, I want you to think of drawing your tailbone under, right? And so lengthening your lumbar spine. Okay? So you got that roundness. Now, if you got really tight hamstrings, you're probably going to need to keep the bend in the knees. But if you don't, knees can start to straighten. You can start to round. You can start to reach down. You can start to come into the shape maybe in a more traditional sense that you're used to. Let your hands softly rest where they may on your feet, your ankles, your shins. A block. maybe anywhere. What I would advise against is just this kind of number. Don't just have your hands out there. Give them something to relax to. So even if it means just coming down and grabbing on to your shin or at your ankles. Also, peace fingers on the big toe. That counts too. Chin tucks, soft gaze. Ooh, what are you doing with your breath? Where did it go? Did it run away? If it did, catch up with it. Slowly start to come up. Hands behind you, windshield wiper the legs, do all of that nice stuff. Shake, shake, shake it out. All right. And then we will get into a little bit of half frog is where we're going to go with this. So what that's going to look like, and I'll give you both variations, both from you facing the front of your mat and also facing the side of your mat. It's going to be for you to keep the legs where they are, take your left leg, bring your left leg behind you like you're trying to kick yourself in the butt, and then place your left knee down. Or if your foot rests on your blanket, this is half frog. Now, stop. Check out what your hip feels like, especially that left side. This is a strong external rotation of kind of that hip because you're opening your hip up. Even though it doesn't look like it, that's what you're doing. It can be a little intense. This front leg can stay straight, or you can even open it a bit wide and start to, play with coming down here. So this is option kind of number one. Now notice that my heel's close to my butt. If that doesn't feel good for you, you can take it away and maybe open it up more like a traditional frog. You're still going to be stretching and targeting that outer hip complex area. So this part of the leg is going to be where we're trying to get to. And then, of course, if that feels okay and you're working with all of that, you can start to maybe come down onto your forearms and add a little bit more intensity to the variation. Also, this works too if it feels more stable, just to bring the sole of the right foot onto the mat. I'm not so much concerned with the right foot as much as I am with kind of what's happening here in the left leg. Because the right foot will get its turn. For me, I like to keep my spine long if I'm folding forward, and having that blanket to elevate my hips really helps. So we're going to do one more minute on this side, and then I'm going to have you switch out. Get into that other leg. Switch it up. Switch it up. Man, it's so weird. I've been away from this for about a week. We took a break off thinking that kind of the city was going to open up and we can get back to some more traditional yogas. And so we'd taken a break off, and I went to record this tonight, and I was like, what am I doing? It's funny how it goes. Use it or lose it. I really feel that is a true adage. That if we are not honing our skills, they are slowly going away from us. That is just how our mind and body works. 10 more seconds here in this half frog variation. Of course, for my For my real hardcore folks out there who's been practicing for a while, I didn't mention it, but you can always take full frog if you would prefer. Slowly start to come up. We're going to switch to the other side. So undo that left leg. Oh, bring it out. That might feel great. And to get into it on the right side, bring the right leg in. And there you are. Check in first. See how you feel. Make some decisions about where you want to go. And settle in. It helps me to externally rotate my left leg. And how do you do that? Turn your pinky edge of your foot towards your mat. So you're trying to point your big toe up to the sky. Or this edge of your foot up, I should say. Last 20 seconds, the last few breaths. Of course, as we move through this flow, if there's ever, since you are in the comfort of your own home, if you find something you want to dig and you want to do longer, do it longer. This will be recorded and thrown up on our YouTube channel within 72 hours, so you get a chance to replay the class. If you want to hang out in some parts or you want to redo some things, know that that's the nice benefit of video, is that we can come back, slowly start to walk your hands up. And we don't lose. We don't miss opportunities. Be like, yo, what did we do that I really liked in class? Oh, you know what? I'll go to the YouTube channel. I'll get it from there. Sweet. All right. Bring that right leg out. Open both legs nice and wide. Coming into a dragonfly / straddle position. That just might feel good, especially on the outer hips, because that external rotation, we don't do a lot of that. We don't stretch a lot of that or sit in that. So trying to find and make space there can always be a little interesting. All right. Find some length first. The same rules we talked about with the pelvis and caterpillar are going to apply here. So think long spine, small anterior tilt forward. So shift the pubic bone down. Lengthen up through the spine. Keep it long. Walk the hands out. Walk the hands out. Walk the hands out. Walk the hands out. Keep it long. Keep it long. Keep it soft. Now put the eye gaze down. Keep the spine long. So don't tuck your chin. Just look down. That's it. Soft gaze. We're going to hold this lengthened version of this for just a moment. And in yoga speak, especially teacher speak, that's like, 30 breaths. So it's not like a moment. I get yelled at all the time for tricking students. I don't try to trick you. It's just easier to say a moment than it's like, yo, we're going to stay here for 7 minutes. Like, that scares people. I'm not trying to scare you. It's kind of like when when we tell our kids shots don't hurt. That's not entirely true. Shots actually hurt. But, it's not the best setup. Sometimes you just got to get folks into it, and then, the rest will kind of work itself out. One nice thing about this long spine is that when you fill up that breath, you can really start to open up that rib cage. So use that space to stretch you even further. What you're hearing is the sound of my Ujjayi breath, so I'm constricting the back of my throat, lengthening the breath out, slowing it down. The longer you can exhale, the easier it is to slip into your parasympathetic system. slowly start to walk the hands back up. All right. And now we're going to simply do the opposite. So draw the tailbone down, pubic bone up, open up the legs, turn the toes up towards the sky, tuck the chin into your chest, start to round into yourself. See how much further down you can come. Maybe get lower, maybe you don't. Maybe your knees need to be bent here. For the hamstrings, do that. Then drop back into your Ujjayi breath. Now, I can tell you from experience that one of these poses feels better than the other because that might have something to do with how your body naturally sits with its pelvis. I, personally, tend to be anteriorly tilted forward, meaning my pelvis in a natural position sits a little more forward rather than neutral. So for me, it always feels good to actually tuck my tailbone because I don't do that in my natural body state. So part of finding that competence, that balance between being cocky and being overly confident. See, there's a small line. Competence and confidence. There's that small line there. But part of that is knowing how your body works, learning, putting time and effort, putting time in on your mat, and effort to learn how your body works. But never coming to a place where you feel like you know how your body works. And avoid sliding into this, oh, well, I could never. There's no way that I can. These self-limiting beliefs, these playing small. Who are you playing small for? You're doing no one any good by playing small at anything. You are a gift of creation. It took so much for you to even exist, so don't even think you're not magic. Slowly start to walk your hands back up. In case no one told you that you were there, I said it, so now you know. That's nice. That felt good on my legs. Hopefully that felt somewhat reasonable on your legs. All right, we're going to do one more thing for the hips, and then we're going to just kind of twist it out. So we're going to take pigeon pose. So I'm going to come off my blanket, move that on out the way. And we're going to get into pigeon a little bit differently. So if you're in a straddle, which is what we are in right now, whether you're facing the front of your mat or the long side of your mat, I want you to kind of start to turn so that your right foot is even with the long edge of your mat. Now remember that half frog shape we were in? Do that same thing with your left leg. So left toes are pointing out towards the left, right toes are pointing forward. Your hips are kind of in the middle. So this is deer pose. This is a variation of pigeon. We typically use in yin, not so much in yang practice. Now, you might be like, okay, this feels a lot like the frog pose, which it very well does for me, so maybe it does for you. Now all you're going to do is start to open this leg up a bit more. And maybe you like the way this feels. Find a little bit of length. And then finally, of course, if you want just your traditional pigeon, it's a matter of straightening the leg all the way out. And then sitting into pigeon. Of course, if you have elevated hips and it feels good, slide a block or slide a blanket under that right hip to help you out. Now, I like to control the depth of my pigeon by what's going on with my front leg, so that heel, for me, isn't parallel or all the way evenly straight. For me, I draw it a little more closer towards my middle, towards the midline, towards my center. And I immediately went into the sleeping swan variation, which is what you see me doing right now. That was mostly muscle memory. You didn't have to drop down on your forearms. You can also stay high on the hands and really add some open back bendedness to this. We haven't done a lot of that, but you could be here, and that would be fine too. All right, if you put a block under that right hip or a blanket, go ahead and slide it out so that you can sit onto your right hip. As you do, start to come up. Now all you're going to do is rotate both knees towards the back of the mat. Boop. And yes, that was a boop. I get a lot of grief about boops. But anyways, I digress. And then you start to work into either deer or all the way into your sleeping swan for that left side. Only a couple minutes on each side, so not too much, not too long, just enough. Finding our Goldilocks. $30 more seconds to be here. 30 more seconds to soften, to softness. Sounds like a commercial. 30 more seconds to softness. Slowly start to lower that left hip down. Right leg swings it around towards the back of your mat. Left leg straightens. So you're back in a seated position with your feet facing the back of your mat and your head facing towards the front. Wiggle the toes, move the legs in and out. You've done a lot of work on all this situation here, so show yourself a little bit of love. Come on down onto your backs. Draw your knees into your chest. Big hug, big squeeze. You are everything amazing that you need to be. As you give yourself this big squeeze, take a moment and find something to be grateful for in your life right now. It could be anything small or large. It doesn't matter the size or the scope. Gratitude practice is about being consistent and noticing the good in your life. So what's one good thing that happened for you today? I helped out my boss personally. Gave him a ride to go get his car fixed. So yay, I did a good deed for someone. That's my example. You don't have to shout yours out by any means, but it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. Big squeeze, big squeeze. Slowly, slowly start to reach your feet up towards the ceiling. Let the hands fall out to the side. Flex the toes, point and flex and point and flex. See if you can create some length in the spine by drawing your pelvis down to see if that helps flatten out your lumbar curve. For some of us, depending on our bodies and our booties, we may not be able to do that, but do that the best that you can with what you got. Slowly pull the knees in, and then we're going to gently let them fall over to the left. Keep the feet facing towards the back of the mat, which means your toes should be facing left. Breath into the belly. Soft and steady. Slowly start to pull the knees back to center. Straighten the legs up to the ceiling one more time. Knees in. Fall over to the right this time. All right, go ahead and slowly start to pull your knees back to center. They go up with the feet. Extend out one more time. And then they come all the way down, down, down. Flat and arriving in your Shavasana pose. Whatever feels comfortable for you. Maybe you take a nice wide stance. Maybe you wrap yourself in your blanket. But whatever you do, maybe you put a block underneath your hips. But close your eyes. Soften your breath. Turn inwards. Notice whatever sensations are arising in your body. Scanning from the crown of the head all the way down to the toes. Sensing, feeling, and asking each part of the body to shut down. Knowing that within you lies all of the skills you need to be a more competent person as you move through your life. The humility to know that your cup should remain empty, and the confidence to know that you don't know everything, and you're going to constantly continue to search for new information, question what you believe, and make adjustments if it makes sense to. Feel free to spend as much or as little time as you need decompressing from your practice, taking any additional poses that you might need, revisiting anything that maybe you liked. I want to thank you all for showing up to your mat and to your practice and allowing me to guide you through your flow. With love and gratitude, until we meet again, namaste.